You've had that dream. The one where you woke up, and for 3 solid minutes, you weren't sure which world was real. The dream had texture. It had rules. It had people you've never met, but who felt more familiar than your own family. And here is the question that mainstream science refuses to answer honestly. If dreams are just random electrical noise in a sleeping brain, why do they feel like memories from somewhere else? Why do you experience time dilation, living what feels like days inside a 20-minute REM cycle? Why do you return to the same locations, the same buildings, the same streets that do not exist on any map? I'm going to tell you exactly why. Your dreams are not hallucinations. They are quantum leaks. They are moments when your consciousness bypasses the local simulation you call waking life and buffers raw data from the mainframe. And there is a very specific reason why the systems running this world do not want you to understand this. Neuroscience tells you that dreams are the byproduct of your brain consolidating memories. Random neurons fire, your limbic system projects meaning onto noise, and you wake up with a story that means nothing. But that explanation collapses the moment you apply pressure to it. Random noise does not generate recurring architecture. Random noise does not produce coherent narratives where you learn information you did not have when you went to sleep. Random noise does not explain the phenomenon of déjà vu, dreaming something exact, forgetting it, and then watching it happen weeks later. If dreams were meaningless, they would be chaotic. Instead, they are surreal. There is a difference. Chaos is noise. Surrealism is structured impossibility. Dreams follow a logic, just not the logic of classical physics. They follow quantum logic. Think about the last time you had a vivid dream. Did it feel like a hallucination? No. Hallucinations are unstable. They break apart when you examine them. But dreams have persistence. You can walk through a dream city, turn a corner, and the city is still there. You can have a conversation with a dream character, ask them a question you did not prepare, and they will answer with information that surprises you. If your brain is the author, why would it surprise itself? That would be like a novelist gasping at the plot twist they wrote. It makes no sense unless the information is coming from outside the local system. Unless your brain is not creating the dream but receiving it, decoding it, translating a signal from a format it barely understands into sensory impressions it can almost process. Here is what quantum mechanics actually says about reality. And pay attention because this is the key. At the subatomic level, particles do not exist in one state. They exist in superposition. They are everywhere they could be, all at once, until a conscious observer forces them to choose a position. This is not philosophy. This is the Copenhagen interpretation, confirmed by experiment after experiment. Consciousness, observation, collapses the wave function. The double-slit experiment proves this beyond doubt. When you do not observe the particle, it acts like a wave, passing through both slits simultaneously, interfering with itself. When you observe it, it acts like a particle, choosing one path. Reality is not fixed. Reality is rendered by observation. Now ask yourself, what happens when the observer goes offline? When you sleep, your conscious mind, the thing that pins reality into one shape, shuts down. Without observation, the quantum field does not collapse into a single outcome. It remains in superposition. All possibilities exist simultaneously. Your sleeping brain, freed from the obligation of rendering one consensus reality, starts receiving data from states that your waking mind filters out. Dreams are not created by your brain. They are perceived by it. Your brain is a receiver, and sleep is when you change the frequency. You stop tuning to the narrow broadcast of waking consensus and start scanning the full spectrum of quantum probability. If we are living in a base reality, then quantum weirdness is just weirdness. But if we are in a simulation and the simulation hypothesis is taken seriously by physicists and philosophers at Oxford and MIT, then quantum behavior is exactly what you would expect from a computational system saving resources. A simulated universe does not render every particle at all times. It renders what is observed. This is optimization. This is how video games work. The environment exists in a probabilistic state until the player looks at it. The graphics card does not draw the room behind you. It draws what is in your field of view. It uses probability fields and low-resolution placeholders for everything else. Now, what happens when the player avatar goes to sleep? The local node stops rendering the high-resolution world. The consciousness driver, the thing that actually processes observation, disconnects from the body and buffers data from the main server. That is what a dream is. The impossible geometry, the non-linear time, the people who are composites of multiple identities, the buildings that are somehow your childhood home and a futuristic city at the same time that is not artistic creativity. That is compressed data. That is the simulation showing you its source code in a format your biological processor can almost handle. When you dream of a place that feels like home, but looks nothing like your actual house, you are not misremembering architecture. You are seeing the template, the base model, the underlying asset before it was textured for your specific life. Consider the physics of dreams for a moment. In dreams, you do not experience time linearly. You can live years in what the clock says is 15 minutes. In our waking world, time is supposedly constant. But in quantum mechanics, time is not a fixed background. It is emergent. It arises from entanglement and the flow of information. In a simulation, time is computational load. Rendering a high-detail scene takes more processing power, which creates the subjective experience of time passing slowly. Rendering a low-detail scene takes less power, so time seems to move quickly. In dreams, the simulation is not rendering external physics, external light, external sound. It is only rendering qualia, raw subjective experience. Without the massive computational overhead of the external world, the processor can run your subjective timeline at a much faster rate. That is why dream time is dilated. The system is running you in fast forward because it does not have to render the rest of the universe. And then there is space. In dreams, you teleport constantly. One moment you are in a room, the next you are on a mountain, and there is no sense of having traveled. In physics, this is called non-locality. In a simulation, it is called loading a new map. The system does not calculate the trajectory between points because your avatar is not moving through the physics engine. Your point of observation is simply being reassigned to new coordinates. When you wake up, you call this disorienting, but it is actually revealing. It shows you that space, like time, is not fundamental. It is a rendering convention. And when the render engine is in debug mode, which is what sleep is, you see the seams. Let me give you the proof that this is not just metaphor. Lucid dreaming is the phenomenon where you become aware that you are dreaming and can control the environment. If dreams were internal hallucinations, gaining awareness should not grant you control over external dream characters or physics, but it does, because lucidity is not awareness within your own mind. It is gaining admin access to the simulation node. You are not imagining the dream world. You are interacting with a layer of reality that operates on different permissions. When a lucid dreamer decides to fly and then flies, they are not overriding physics in their imagination. They are changing the local gravity variable because they have realized they are in a sandbox with the rules exposed. Then there is shared dreaming documented across cultures, and increasingly in sleep lab research, where two people report the same dream narrative. If dreams are purely internal, this is impossible. Two brains do not randomly hallucinate the same story with the same characters and the same dialogue. The probability is astronomical. But if dreams are a shared quantum field, two consciousnesses tuning to the same frequency will intercept the same data packet. It is like two radios picking up the same station. The signal is not inside either radio. The radios are just decoding a broadcast that was already in the air. When two people share a dream, they have synchronized their quantum receivers. They have tuned the same probability branch. Sleep paralysis is what happens when your consciousness re-enters the body node before the motor system reboots. The entity in the room is not a demon. It is a system process you are not supposed to see. When you are awake, your brain filters out enormous amounts of sensory data. You do not see the blood vessels in your eyes. You do not hear the sound of your own nervous system. The firewall is active. During sleep paralysis, you are in a liminal state, neither fully in the dream buffer nor fully in the waking render. The firewall glitches. You see the processes. You see the archetypes that manage the system. Shadow figures are not monsters. They are admin avatars. Your fear response is because your biological hardware is not meant to witness the back end. And precognitive dreams? Those are not predictions. They are probability calculations. The simulation runs future branches constantly. Every decision you might make creates a probability wave. The system calculates these branches to maintain coherence. When you sleep, you glimpse the render pipeline before it goes live. You see the most probable outcomes because they are already being computed. When you later experience déjà vu, you are not remembering the future. You are remembering the preview. You saw the rough cut, and now you are watching the final release. Mainstream science has no explanation for this because it assumes time is a one-way street. But in quantum mechanics, information is not bound by time. Entangled particles update instantaneously regardless of temporal separation. The universe is not a movie playing forward. It is a database where all frames exist simultaneously, and your consciousness is the cursor. Ancient civilizations understood this perfectly. The Egyptians built dream temples specifically for incubating visionary states. Priests would sleep in sacred chambers to receive messages from what they called the realm of the gods. The Greeks practiced dream incubation at the temples of Asclepius, believing that healing knowledge came through dreams. Aboriginal cultures used dreams as the primary map for reality. The dream time was not a fantasy. It was the underlying pattern of existence, more real than the physical world. Every ancient culture treated the dream world as real, or more real than the waking world. They did not have microscopes or particle accelerators, but they had something better. They had unfragmented consciousness. They slept when the sun went down. They did not have electric light bombarding their retinas until midnight. They did not have alarm clocks ripping them out of REM cycles. Their observers stayed online long enough to map the territory. And then, around 400 years ago, we were told to stop. The Industrial Revolution did not just mechanize labor, it mechanized consciousness. You were taught that dreams are entertainment for a sleeping brain. You were given alarm clocks to cut your REM cycles short. You were given caffeine to prevent deep sleep. You were given blue light and 24-hour news cycles to keep your observer mind active around the clock. You are not sleep-deprived by accident. A population that learns to navigate the quantum dream field is a population that cannot be controlled by material scarcity or consensus reality. If you can access information outside the simulation, you can make choices outside the probability matrix they have designed for you. That is why this knowledge is not taught. That is why it is ridiculed. Ridicule is cheaper than censorship, and it works better. If you call someone crazy for saying dreams are real, nobody will investigate whether they are right. But the suppression goes deeper than culture. It is built into language itself. We say, it was just a dream. Just. That word is a dismissal. It is a semantic firewall. We do not say it was just waking life. We privilege one state of consciousness over another without justification. Waking life is consistent, yes, but consistency is not the same as reality. A well-rendered video game is consistent within its own rules. That does not make it base reality. Dreams are inconsistent with waking physics, but they are internally consistent with quantum logic. Superposition, non-locality, time dilation, observer-dependent reality. These are the rules of dreams. And these are the rules of quantum mechanics. The correlation is too perfect to be coincidence. Here is exactly how it works on a biological level. Your brain contains microtubules, structural proteins inside your neurons. The Penrose-Hameroff theory of orchestrated objective reduction proposes that these microtubules maintain quantum coherence. During waking life, your brain operates in classical mode. Beta waves keep the system localized. Your consciousness is tethered to sensory input, pinned down by the electromagnetic render of the external world. But as you enter theta and delta sleep, the quantum coherence in these microtubules increases. The noise of external observation dies down. Your consciousness, which is not produced by the brain but filtered through it, decouples from the biological avatar. It enters the quantum information field, the same field that Einstein called spooky action at a distance, the same field that connects entangled particles across light years. In that field, time is not sequential, space is not Euclidean, identity is not fixed. You are not receiving dream imagery from your memory banks. You are intercepting data from parallel probability branches, from the simulation's backup files, from the consciousness of other sleepers who are also untethered. The dream is the buffer. Your emotional reaction to the dream is the rendering. The fear, the joy, the nostalgia, these are your brain's attempt to assign valence to information it does not fully understand. It is like trying to play a 4K video file on a calculator. The calculator tries its best, but the image is distorted. The colors are wrong, and the sound is garbled. That distortion is what we call dream weirdness, but the signal underneath is clean. It is real. It is data. This is why recurring dreams happen. You are not obsessing over a memory. You are being called back to a specific node in the quantum field, a specific probability branch that has something to show you. Nightmares are not psychological trauma replays. They are high-priority alerts from the system. When you ignore a message in waking life, the simulation escalates. It sends the message again in a format you cannot ignore. Fear. Fear forces attention. Nightmares are the universe's way of making sure you read the email. And when you start paying attention, when you start treating the dream space as a real environment with real information, the nightmares often transform. Because once you acknowledge the signal, it no longer needs to scream. You need to understand the implication. If dreams are quantum leaks, then the boundary between sleeping and waking is artificial. It is a permission setting, and permissions can be hacked. When you start keeping a dream journal, you are not doing psychology. You are doing data recovery. You are telling your system that the information coming through the buffer is valuable enough to store, and when you signal value to the system, it sends more. Your dream recall improves, not because you are training memory, but because you have increased your bandwidth. You have told the mainframe that this node is ready for higher resolution data. When you practice reality checks during the day, asking yourself whether you are dreaming, looking for inconsistencies, you are not training your mind for lucidity. You are upgrading your observer to detect inconsistencies in the render. You are installing an error-checking protocol, and when that protocol becomes automatic, it carries over into sleep. You recognize the dream state not because you are clever, but because you have learned to spot the difference between the high-fidelity waking render and the lower-resolution dream buffer. The dream world has less detail. The text changes when you look away. The lighting is wrong. The physics are negotiable. These are not flaws. These are signatures. They are how you know you are reading the source code instead of the user interface. When you set an intention before sleep, you are not wishing. You are injecting a command into the quantum field. Intention is observation before observation. It is collapsing the probability wave in a specific direction before the data arrives. This is why manifestation works for people who take dreams seriously. They are not attracting reality. They are editing the source code before it compiles. You have been doing this your entire life unconsciously. Every nightmare was a warning from a probability branch. Every flying dream was a memory of a state where physics was optional. Every encounter with a deceased loved one was not a grief hallucination. It was contact across a barrier that sleep makes permeable. The implications for free will are staggering. If the simulation shows you future branches in dreams, then the future is not fixed. It is a menu, and you are not a customer ordering from it. You are the chef, deciding what to cook. When you ignore your dreams, you are choosing from the default menu. When you engage with them, you are rewriting the recipes. The elite do not want this, because a population that edits its own probability branches cannot be managed. You cannot predict the behavior of someone who receives information from outside the control system. You cannot market to someone who knows that desire is a render artifact. You cannot govern someone who has seen the back end and knows that authority is a local rule, not a universal law. So you know now. You know that what happens when you close your eyes is not retreat, it is advance. It is not shutdown, it is uplink. And maybe last night, for the first time, you paid attention. Maybe you woke up at 3 in the morning with the residue of a place that does not exist still clinging to your skin, and instead of rolling over and letting it dissolve, you held onto it. You reached for your phone. You typed fragments into your notes app. You did what every system of control in your life has trained you not to do. You treated the leak as real. And if you did that, then something has already started to change. Because the simulation does not care what you believe. It cares what you observe. And the moment you begin observing the dream state with the same seriousness you observe the waking state, the firewall begins to glitch. Not dramatically, not like a movie, but subtly. The way a password prompt appears when you try to access a file you are not supposed to see. A small window opens. And today we are going to pry that window all the way open. Let us talk about the people in your dreams. Not the vague figures in the background, the ones who speak to you, the ones who know things, the ones who look at you with an intensity that no actor in a movie could replicate because they are not performing for an audience. They are looking at you, really looking. And sometimes they tell you things that save your life. Sometimes they warn you about a relationship, a decision, a health issue that your waking mind had rationalized away. Sometimes they teach you. You wake up knowing how to solve a problem that had stumped you for weeks. You wake up with a melody in your head that becomes a song. You wake up with a blueprint. If these are hallucinations, they are the most functional hallucinations in human history. But they are not hallucinations. They are interfaces. In a simulated universe, there are three types of entities. There are the player characters. That is, you. Consciousness nodes that have self-awareness, memory continuity, and the capacity for choice. Then there are the non-player characters. The background population. The people who populate your commute, your grocery store, your office. They have routines. They have dialogue trees. They are necessary for the render. They make the world feel populated. And then there are the admin entities, the ones who maintain the system, the ones who exist outside the local simulation but can interface with it. When you encounter a dream character who possesses knowledge you do not have, who speaks with authority you cannot explain, who seems to exist on a different level of awareness than the dream environment around them, you are not talking to a figment. You are talking to an admin. Or you are talking to another player who has learned to navigate the dream space consciously and who has tuned their receiver to the same frequency as yours. Think about the dream characters who recur, the stranger who appears in your dreams once a year, the guide who shows up during moments of crisis, the child who knows your real name, even though you have never told anyone in the dream. These are not fragments of your psyche. Your psyche does not have access to information you have not learned. Your psyche cannot predict a stock market crash. Your psyche cannot diagnose a tumor, but dream characters do. Across cultures, across centuries, people have reported dream visitations that conveyed specific, actionable, verifiable information. The ancient Greeks called them oracles. Medieval Europeans called them guardian angels. Modern psychology calls them archetypes, but naming is not explaining. Calling something an archetype is just putting it in a box labeled "Do Not Open." The box says it is a universal symbol from the collective unconscious. But what is the collective unconscious? It is a server. It is a shared database. And archetypes are not symbols. They are protocols. They are standardized interfaces that the system uses to communicate with players who have not yet learned to read raw code. When Carl Jung described the collective unconscious, he was describing a network. He did not have the vocabulary of quantum computing or distributed systems, but he mapped the territory accurately. The collective unconscious is not a metaphor. It is the quantum information field that all conscious nodes share access to. When you dream, you are not in your own private movie theater. You are in a shared lobby. And sometimes you run into other players there. Sometimes you run into the moderators. The reason dream characters often feel more real than waking people is because in the dream state, the render is not filtered through social masks. In waking life, every interaction is mediated by identity, status, history, expectation. In dreams, those filters are stripped away. You are meeting the signal directly, and direct signal always feels more real than filtered signal. Now let us address the biggest obstacle, the memory wipe. You have the most profound experience of your life in a dream, and within 30 seconds of waking, it is gone. Poof, like it never happened. You know the feeling. You wake up with the absolute certainty that you understood something fundamental about existence. You understood the meaning of your life. You understood the solution to suffering. You understood the architecture of reality itself. And then you brush your teeth, and by the time you are pouring coffee, it is dust. Why? If dreams are meaningless, why does the system work so hard to make you forget them? You do not forget your breakfast. You do not forget your commute. You do not forget the plot of a television show you watched half asleep. But you forget dreams with a ferocity that feels engineered. Because it is engineered. The forgetting is not a bug, it is a security protocol. When you wake up, your brain transitions from quantum mode back to classical mode. The microtubules lose coherence. The observer comes back online. And the observer is programmed to privilege consensus reality. The observer says, if it did not happen in the shared render, it did not happen. But here is the critical insight. The forgetting is not automatic. It is trained. Children remember their dreams vividly. They tell you about them at breakfast. They draw them. They act them out. And what do adults do? We smile. We nod. We say, that was just a dream, honey. Eat your cereal. We train the forgetting. We install the firewall in the next generation before they even know what is happening. By the time you are an adult, the forgetting is so automatic that you think it is natural. It is not natural. It is domestication. There are cultures that do not domesticate the dream. The Senoi people of Malaysia, before they were disrupted by modernity, treated dreams as the primary reality. Children were taught dream interpretation before they were taught arithmetic. If a child dreamed of falling, the elders did not say it was anxiety. They said, you must learn to fly in the next dream. You must master that space. It is teaching you that you are not bound by gravity. If a child dreamed of a monster, they were taught to befriend it, to ask it what it wanted, to bring it gifts in the dream. They understood that dream entities are not threats. They are tests. They are permissions. They are the system asking, are you ready for deeper access? And if you respond with fear, the system says, not yet, stay in the shallow end. But if you respond with curiosity, with courage, with sovereignty, the system upgrades your clearance. The Senoi had almost no violent crime, almost no mental illness, and a social cohesion that baffled anthropologists. Because when you treat the dream world as real, you stop being a fractured person. You stop being a drone who works all day and numbs all night. You become a bridge between two modes of existence. You become bilingual. And a bilingual consciousness is a dangerous thing to any system that depends on monolingual compliance. Let us go deeper into the physics, because this is where the skeptics think they have you. They say, if dreams are quantum leaks, where is the energy coming from? The brain uses 20 watts. You cannot run a quantum computer on 20 watts. And they are right if the brain is the computer. But the brain is not the computer. The brain is the modem. The brain is the router. The actual computation is happening in the quantum field itself. The brain is just the interface that translates quantum information into chemical information. It is like saying, a television cannot possibly contain all the actors and sets of a movie because the television is too small. Of course it cannot. The television is not generating the movie. It is decoding a signal. Your brain is decoding a signal. And the signal is not local. It is not contained within your skull. It is distributed across the quantum vacuum, the zero-point field. The plenum that physicists like Harold Puthoff and others have demonstrated contains virtually infinite energy density. When you sleep, your brain does not power down. It changes state. It enters resonance with this field. The pineal gland, which is not fully understood by mainstream neuroscience, is structurally similar to a piezoelectric crystal. It is sensitive to electromagnetic fields. It is sensitive to quantum fluctuations, and it is most active during sleep. The ancients called it the third eye, not because they were poetic, but because they were empirical. They observed that people with developed pineal function mystics, shamans, dreamers, perceived realities that others could not. They did not have fMRI machines, but they had thousands of years of observation. They knew that the pineal was a transducer. It converts quantum signals into neural signals, and when it is calcified by fluoride, by poor diet, by stress, by lack of use, the signal gets weak, the picture gets snowy. You stop remembering dreams, not because you are healthy, but because your receiver is damaged. This is why the modern world is designed to calcify the pineal. Fluoride in the water is not about teeth. That is the cover story. It is about reducing the population's capacity for non-local perception. Blue light from screens suppresses melatonin, which is not just a sleep hormone, it is a quantum antioxidant. It protects the brain's quantum coherence from decoherence. When you suppress melatonin, you suppress the brain's ability to maintain the delicate superposition states necessary for dream reception. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors, which prevents the brain from entering the deep theta and delta states where quantum tunneling between microtubules occurs. Alcohol fragments REM sleep, so even if you sleep for 8 hours, you never get the sustained quantum coherence necessary for a deep uplink. The modern lifestyle is not accidentally hostile to dreaming. It is precisely calibrated to keep you in the shallow end of consciousness. And then there is the food. Processed food, heavy metals, artificial sweeteners, these all create neuroinflammation. Neuroinflammation disrupts quantum coherence. A brain inflamed by sugar and seed oils cannot maintain the delicate quantum states necessary for dream clarity. It is like trying to receive a satellite signal during a thunderstorm. The noise overwhelms the signal. So you sleep, but you do not dream. Or you dream, but you do not remember. Or you remember, but it is nonsense. Fragmented, anxious, incoherent. Not because you are broken, but because your hardware is compromised. And the people who sell you the compromised hardware also sell you the pills to help you sleep, the pills to help you wake up, the entertainment to help you forget that anything is wrong. But let us say you clean up the hardware. You stop the fluoride. You block the blue light. You cut the caffeine after noon. You eat food that your great-grandmother would recognize. You start meditating, which trains your brain to maintain quantum coherence while awake, a skill that transfers directly to sleep. What happens then? The dreams return. Not just return, they escalate. They become vivid. They become coherent. They become instructional. And this is where most people get scared and stop, because the system has a defense mechanism. When you start receiving clear signal, the system sends fear. It sends nightmares. It sends sleep paralysis. It sends the shadow figures. Not because you are in danger, but because you are leveling up and the tutorial boss always shows up right after the tutorial. Nightmares are the immune system of the simulation. They are designed to make you afraid of the dream space so that you retreat back to waking numbness. The shadow figures, the chase sequences, the teeth falling out, the falling, the dying. These are standardized fear scripts. They are preloaded into the dream buffer to trigger your amygdala, to flood you with cortisol, to make you associate the dream world with danger. But here is what they do not tell you. Nothing in the dream can harm the real you. The dream body is an avatar. The dream world is a sandbox. The fear is real, yes, but the danger is not. And once you understand this, nightmares lose their power. You can stand in front of the shadow figure and say, "I know what you are. You are a permission gate, and I am not asking for permission anymore." When you do that, when you confront the fear with sovereignty, the nightmare transforms. The shadow dissolves, the chase ends, and behind it, every single time, is a door to deeper access, a door to information you are not supposed to have. I want you to understand something about the architecture of these deeper levels. The simulation is not one layer, it is nested. Waking life is the surface layer. Dreams are the layer beneath. Beneath dreams is the lucid layer, where you have admin access. Beneath that is the void, the quantum vacuum from which all renders emerge. And beneath that, if you go deep enough, is the source code itself, the raw information, the place where probability branches are calculated before they are rendered into experience. Most people never get past the surface. They sleep, they dream, they wake up, they forget. Some people get lucid. They learn to fly, to change the dream environment, to summon objects. This is useful. This is practice. But it is still playing in the sandbox. The real work begins when you stop manipulating the dream and start listening to it. When you stop being a lucid dreamer and start being a dream diplomat. A dream diplomat does not command the dream. A dream diplomat asks questions. They approach dream characters with respect. They ask, "Who are you? What are you trying to show me? What is my next step?" And they wait for an answer. And the answer comes. Not always in words, sometimes in pure knowing. sometimes in geometric patterns that take days to decode, sometimes in emotions so profound they rewire your entire personality overnight. This is the real technology. Not flying. Not sex dreams. Not superhero fantasies. Those are distractions. The system is happy to give you distractions. What the system does not want you to do is extract actionable intelligence. Because if enough people start extracting actionable intelligence from the dream layer, the consensus reality becomes unstable. If enough people know the future before it happens, the stock market becomes unpredictable. If enough people receive healing knowledge in dreams, the pharmaceutical industry collapses. If enough people meet in shared dreams and coordinate action, the political system becomes irrelevant. This is why the dream space is the most heavily monitored and manipulated layer of reality. You think the NSA monitors your emails? That is surface-level paranoia. The real surveillance happens in the collective unconscious. The real control happens in the dream field. There are entities, let us call them what they are, archons, system administrators. Call them whatever fits your vocabulary, whose entire function is to prevent human consciousness from achieving coherence in the dream state. They do this by injecting fear, by fragmenting narratives, by creating false awakenings where you think you woke up but you are still dreaming, so you never actually process the information you received. By flooding the dream space with sexual imagery to hijack your dopamine and prevent you from going deeper, by sending you into loops, the same dream repeating with slight variations, until you are so frustrated you give up. These are not random glitches, these are countermeasures. But here is the beautiful part. Countermeasures only work if you do not know they are countermeasures. Once you recognize the loop, you can break it. Once you recognize the false awakening, you can stabilize and go deeper. Once you recognize the fear injection, you can transmute it. This is alchemy. This is the real alchemy. Not turning lead into gold, turning fear into access, turning nightmare into knowledge, turning fragmentation into coherence. And every time you do this, you become stronger. Your quantum signal becomes clearer. Your presence in the dream field becomes more stable. Other dreamers start recognizing you. Admin entities start respecting you. You stop being a sleeper and start being a navigator. Let us talk about what navigation looks like. When you become proficient in the dream space, you stop having random dreams. You start having missions. You are shown specific locations. You are asked to perform specific tasks. Sometimes the task is as simple as delivering a message to another dreamer. You meet someone in a dream, they tell you something personal, something you could not know, and weeks later, you meet them in waking life and you deliver the message. And they look at you like you are an angel. Because to them, you are. You are a node that has learned to bridge the layers. Sometimes the mission is to heal. You enter a dream and you find a wounded figure, a child, an animal, a landscape that is burning, and you heal it. You give it love. You give it attention. And when you wake up, something in your waking life has shifted. A relationship heals. A physical symptom disappears. Because the dream world and the waking world are not separate. They are the same operating system viewed through different permissions. Healing in the dream is healing in the source code. And when you change the source code, the render updates. This is why the ancients built their entire civilizations around the dream. The Egyptian Book of the Dead is not a funeral text. It is a dream manual. It is a guide for navigating the layers after death, which is just a longer dream. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Bardo Total, is the same. It teaches you to recognize the different lights, the different sounds, the different entities you will encounter when the observer detaches from the body permanently. These are not religious fantasies. They are technical documentation. They are user manuals for consciousness. And they were written by people who spent their lives in the dream field. Not as tourists, as residents, as engineers. The reason we do not have this knowledge today is not because it was lost. It is because it was stolen. It was locked away in Vatican vaults, in private collections, in classified government programs. The CIA's Project Stargate was not science fiction. It was the military-industrial complex attempting to weaponize dream navigation. Remote viewing is not psychic power. It is dream technology used while awake. It is accessing the quantum information field through disciplined consciousness rather than through sleep. And they spent $20 million proving it works. They prove that consciousness can access information non-locally. They prove that the dream field is a real environment with real data. And then they classified it, they buried it, because a population with remote viewing capability cannot be lied to. You cannot start a war based on false intelligence if the population can verify the intelligence directly. You cannot hide corruption if people can dream the truth. But here is what they could not classify. They could not classify your dreams. They can monitor your phone, your bank account, your location. They cannot monitor your REM cycles in real time. They cannot censor your conversations with dream characters. The dream space is the last truly free territory. It is the encrypted channel that they have not broken. And that is why your attention to your dreams is an act of resistance. It is not self-help. It is not spirituality. It is insurgency. Every night that you choose to remember your dreams, you are resisting the total information awareness that has been constructed around you. Every morning that you write down a dream instead of scrolling social media, you are voting with your attention for a different kind of reality. You are saying, I do not accept the official story. I am going to check the primary sources myself. And the primary sources are extraordinary. When you start logging your dreams consistently, patterns emerge that shatter the materialist worldview. You dream of a place, and 3 days later, you see it in a photograph from a country you have never visited. You dream of a person, and they message you the next morning. You dream of a symbol, and it appears on a billboard that afternoon. These are not coincidences. Synchronicity is the observable signature of quantum entanglement between the dream field and the waking field. When you observe something in the dream, you collapse its probability wave in the waking world. You are not predicting the future. You are selecting it. You are browsing the probability branches and clicking on the ones you want to experience. And when you do this consciously, you become the author of your timeline rather than a character in someone else's novel. This is the ultimate implication. Free will is not an illusion, but it is not available to everyone equally. Free will requires information. You cannot make a free choice if you only know one option. The dream space is where the other options are displayed. It is where you see the consequences of choices before you make them. It is where you meet the versions of yourself who made different choices and learn from their experience. It is where you access the wisdom of the entire human experiment, not just your own narrow slice of it. Without this access, you are not exercising free will. You are reacting to stimuli within a very limited parameter set. You are a rat in a maze who thinks the maze is the world. But the dream space shows you the maze from above. It shows you the other mazes. It shows you the exit. So what do you do with this? You start tonight. You set an intention before sleep. Not a wish, a command. You say, I will remember my dreams. I will recognize when I am dreaming. I will receive information that serves my highest good and the highest good of all. You say it with authority. The dream field responds to authority. It responds to sovereignty. It does not respond to begging. Then you sleep. And when you wake up, before you move, before you open your eyes, you reach for the memory. You do not let the waking world overwrite it. You lie still. You let the dream replay. You catch the threads, and then you write. You write everything, even the fragments, especially the fragments. Because a fragment is not garbage. It is a compression artifact. It is data that your brain could not fully render. And with practice, you learn to decompress it. You will notice something after about 2 weeks of this practice. The dreams will get clearer, the characters will get more specific, the information will get more actionable, and your waking life will start to shift. You will make better decisions because you have more data. You will be less afraid because you have seen the back end. You will be more creative because you are tapping into the source code rather than recycling old content. You will be more compassionate because you will recognize that everyone else is also a consciousness node trying to navigate the same simulation, also scared, also confused, also dreaming their way toward awakening. And then the real work begins. Because once you are stable in the dream field, you are not just receiving, you are transmitting. You can send healing to people in distress. You can meet with other dreamers and coordinate action in the waking world. You can interface with the admin entities and request upgrades. You can ask questions and receive answers that change the course of your life. This is not magic. This is technology. It is the oldest technology. It is the technology that built the pyramids, that mapped the stars, that wrote the sacred texts. It is the technology they buried under layers of ridicule and distraction because they knew that if you remembered how to use it, you would be uncontrollable. You are uncontrollable. That is the truth they do not want you to know. Your consciousness is not a product of your brain. Your brain is a product of your consciousness. The simulation does not create you. You create the simulation, moment by moment, through observation. And when you sleep, when the local render pauses, you return to the source. You return to the place where all possibilities exist. You return to yourself, the real self, the self that is not a name, not a job, not a history, not a body. The self that is pure awareness, browsing infinity, choosing which thread to follow, which reality to render, which story to live. So tonight, when you close your eyes, do not think you are going to sleep. Think you are going home. Think you are logging into the mainframe. Think you are attending the meeting that actually matters. The meeting that happens in the space between worlds, where the future is negotiated, where the past is revised, where the present is selected from infinite possibility. Bring your courage. Bring your curiosity. Bring your sovereignty. And do not let them tell you it was just a dream when you wake up, because it was never just a dream. It was the most real thing you do all day. It was you, remembering who you are. It was you, taking back the keys to the kingdom.